was just past midnight when Will Spencer heard the doorbell. Not the sharp, purposeful ring of a guest or delivery, but a hesitant press, soft, almost apologetic. The kind of sound that made you pause mid-thought and wonder if you'd imagined it. At first, he ignored it, thinking maybe it was a late-night prank or a sensor glitch. But then it came again, a low chime echoing through the hallway of his sleek Bel Air home. Unease bloomed in his chest. He pulled on a hoodie and made his way down the dimly lit corridor, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound accompanying his barefoot steps. When he opened the door, the air was unnaturally still. The street outside was quiet, bathed in amber from the security lamps. There was no figure in the driveway, no car idling nearby. Just a silence that felt off. And then he looked down. There, on the welcome mat, lay a woven basket. Tucked within it, wrapped tightly in a cream-colored blanket with a delicate moon and star pattern, was a baby. A real baby. Sleeping. Breathing. Fragile and impossibly still. His breath caught in his throat as panic surged through his system. His first instinct was denial. This couldn't be real. But reality was undeniable. There was a baby on his doorstep. Taped to the handle of the basket was a note. Not handwritten, but typed on a strip of parchment paper. 3 words. "He's your son." Will staggered backward, heart thudding so violently he thought he might pass out. His mind reeled, cycling through every possibility, every mistake, every buried memory. Who? How? When? Then, tucked under the baby's blanket, his fingers brushed something small and hard, a silver locket. The moment he flipped it open, the world collapsed. Inside was a photo, worn, slightly water-damaged, but unmistakable. Luna. And not the Luna from tabloids or boardrooms, but a personal image. Her hair was pulled back casually, no makeup, her expression tender as she cradled a visible bump beneath a summer dress. Will had never seen the photo before, and that made it worse, because it meant someone else had been there when this moment was captured. Someone who knew. Someone who had kept it secret. His legs nearly gave out. He rushed the baby inside, cradling him with trembling arms, instinct overtaking shock. The child stirred, but didn't cry. He was maybe 6 weeks old, tiny but healthy. Luna's eyes. Will's nose. There was no mistaking it. He called his father, Bill Spencer, immediately. The sound of the elder Spencer's voice on the other end, sharp, skeptical, then slowly silent, was as jarring as the night itself. Within the hour, the Spencer estate was on lockdown. DNA tests were ordered. Security footage was pulled. The Spencer family, already well-versed in secrets, were suddenly thrown into a mystery deeper than any of them could have predicted. And then came the questions that shook Will to his core. If this baby was real, if he was Will's child with Luna, then what exactly had happened the night Luna died? Because all official records claimed that Luna had died in childbirth, an internal hemorrhage, irreversible, tragic. The child had not survived. It had been Dr. Lee herself who had broken the news to Will. Cold. Methodical. Devastating. Will had nearly destroyed himself with grief in the months that followed. And now, years later, a child appeared. Alive. With Luna's locket. And a photograph that shouldn't exist. Everything Will thought he knew fractured in an instant. Katie and Bill demanded answers, pushing through every contact they had in law enforcement, private intelligence, and the medical world. But someone had done their job well. No hospital records, no recent birth certificates. The baby didn't exist on paper. It was as if he had been born in the shadows. A ghost child. Will, torn between the rush of paternal instinct and the suffocating need for truth, started digging himself. He confronted Dr. Lee in person, storming into her private clinic with the locket in one hand and the baby's blanket in the other. Her reaction was immediate, panic hidden beneath practiced calm. When Will demanded to know the truth, Lee's silence told him more than words. She didn't deny it. Instead, she asked a chilling question. Who else knows? That was all he needed. Under pressure, and with the weight of the Spencer media machine at her back, Lee eventually cracked. The truth, or what version she dared reveal, was horrifying. Luna had not died in childbirth. She had survived the initial complications. But there had been complications of a different kind, people involved who wanted her, and the baby gone hidden. A plan was set into motion. Lee claimed she had saved Luna's life through a highly experimental procedure, much like the one used on Finn years ago. She kept her alive under close watch, far from the public eye. But Luna had insisted on giving birth in secret. And someone else had taken the baby. Lee claimed it was Sheila. Will's blood ran cold. If Sheila had been involved, then the stakes were far darker than he had imagined. Sheila, the infamous manipulator, the woman capable of deception at a molecular level, had been part of this child's disappearance.
But why?
Why save Luna and then separate her from her son? Was it revenge? Control? Some twisted form of redemption? As Will's private investigation expanded, he discovered a trail of hush payments and forged documents stretching across state lines. A woman matching Luna's description had been seen in a remote property owned by a shell company connected to Sheila's last known associate. There were rumors, unconfirmed, of a woman who cried every night, who stared at the moon through broken glass, clutching an empty blanket. But no body had ever been found. No grave had ever been shown. The question that burned through Will's soul was no longer, what happened to Luna, but is she still alive? And if so, who had kept her prisoner? Meanwhile, the baby, now officially identified as Will's biological child, became the center of not just media attention, but a familial reckoning. Bill wanted to use every resource to find the truth. Katie feared what they might discover. Donna and Brooke, once close to Luna, were horrified by what it meant. Steffi and Hope questioned how much Sheila's reach truly extended. Even Finn began to doubt the story he'd been told by his mother. As days turned into weeks, the Spencer family was torn apart by mistrust, grief, and the return of ghosts they had buried long ago. Will tried to stay grounded, but each sleepless night, staring into his son's wide, unblinking eyes, felt like a silent accusation. You weren't there. You didn't protect her. You let them bury me. Then came the breaking point. One evening, as Will returned home, he found a letter tucked under his door. No postage. No return address. Just his name. Inside was a single sentence written in Luna's handwriting. He has your strength, but he carries my silence. Will fell to his knees. The implications were devastating. Luna was alive. She had seen the child. She had let him go.
Or been forced to.
And now she was reaching out. But from where?
And why now?
The hunt was no longer just about truth. It was about redemption. About undoing years of deception, of reclaiming a family that had been shattered before it ever had the chance to begin. Will swore an oath that night, holding his son close. He would not rest until he found Luna, until he understood who had tried to erase her, and why. And if Sheila Carter was at the heart of it, then so be it. The Spencers had dealt with her before. But this time, the stakes were higher. Because now, the lie wasn't just about love. It was about life. And the baby in his arms, the boy who should never have existed, was the living proof that not all ghosts stay buried. Some come back. With names. With purpose. And with vengeance. The night the child arrived was already cold, but when Will Spencer opened his front door and saw the bundled newborn resting on his doorstep, the temperature seemed to plummet into something below human comprehension. The baby wasn't crying, just staring. Wide, unblinking eyes met his in an eerie stillness that stopped the world. At first, Will couldn't move. His mind raced through impossible explanations, each more absurd than the last. He bent down slowly, his breath catching, his fingers trembling as he reached for the basket. And there, tucked into the soft folds of a moon-patterned blanket, was a note, anonymous, typed in all caps on ivory paper. He's yours. Keep him safe if you want to stay alive. Will's heart seized. In an instant, the warmth of confusion gave way to something colder.
Threat.
Mystery. Terror. He rushed the child inside, locking every door, closing every curtain. The note shook in his hand. The child, still eerily calm, was warm, clean, cared for. This wasn't abandonment. This was placement. Deliberate. Personal.
And it wasn't just about the baby.
It was about him. Katie arrived minutes later, summoned by his panicked call. Her own reaction mirrored Will's, shock, then maternal instinct. She held the child, soothed him, whispered as if he could explain everything. But the mystery deepened with every moment. No birth certificate. No medical tag. No fingerprints. Just the note. And then, something even more disturbing. Inside the lining of the basket, hidden beneath the padding, was a small pin, an art teacher's lapel pin etched with the name Miss Dillon. Katie froze. She recognized it immediately. Miss Dillon was Hayes Elementary School art instructor. Thoughtful. Gentle. But also, weeks earlier, at the center of a silent storm, she had been involved in the car crash that had killed Luna Nozawa. Or so everyone believed. The discovery ripped open every wound Will had buried. Electra arrived next, her expression turning to steel as she took in the scene. She and Will hadn't spoken much since their emotional fallout months ago.
But now, everything had changed.
She had been part of the chain of events that landed Luna in jail and ultimately into that fateful crash. Her guilt, long simmering beneath her cool exterior, surged to the surface. And when Will showed her the lapel pin, her face went pale. She knew Miss Dillon too well. Will wasted no time. He and Electra went straight to Dillon's apartment, the child left with Katie under guard. The confrontation wasn't cinematic. It was quiet.
Sad.
Dillon, clearly unraveling, opened the door with tears already in her eyes.
She didn't deny anything.
She told them everything. The night of the crash, Luna had escaped custody to confront Dillon, somehow knowing she was more involved than she'd let on in prior legal proceedings. They had argued. Luna had panicked trying to leave. Dillon, shaken and afraid of exposure, followed in her car. The crash had been a result of her tailing Luna. When she reached the wreck, she found the car flipped, flames licking the metal. But inside, Luna was still breathing, barely. And on the back seat floor, a tiny, blood-covered infant, half swaddled and silent, but alive. In that moment, Dillon made a decision, one born not of evil, but cowardice. She took the baby. She dragged Luna from the wreckage just far enough to appear gone, then disappeared into the night. The reports said Luna died. The autopsy report was confused, rushed. Dillon had bribed an EMT, used old favors, manipulated the chaos. She didn't plan on keeping the baby forever, only long enough to figure out what to do. But as days passed, her fear turned to paralysis. The Spencer name, the media, the pressure. She couldn't come forward. So instead, she left the baby on the doorstep. Anonymously, with a note that was part threat, part plea. A scream in ink. Will was shaking as she spoke. He barely heard the rest. A part of him had always felt Luna's death was too clean.
Too convenient.
But nothing could have prepared him for this. His son, his child, had been alive this whole time. Hidden. Alone. Stolen. And Luna, his heart stopped when Dillon spoke her name again. Well, she wasn't dead. Not then. He staggered back. Dillon didn't know where Luna had gone. She assumed she died later from her injuries. Or perhaps someone else had taken her. But the way she said it made it sound like something unfinished. Like a chapter still being written. And then, as if conjured by the storm of grief, Luna appeared. At first, Will thought it was a hallucination. A dream. She stood at the edge of the Spencer Estates courtyard as the sun dipped below the horizon, hair long and dark, face paler, thinner, but unmistakable.
Alive.
Her eyes locked onto Will, then slowly dropped to the child in Katie's arms. Tears flooded her cheeks. Katie stepped back. Electra froze. Will dropped to his knees. Luna explained everything. After the crash, someone had pulled her from the wreckage. Not Dillon. Not EMTs. Someone else. She didn't say who. But she woke up weeks later in a private, off-grid facility, hidden, medicated, restrained. Her baby gone. Her voice ignored. She pretended to be weak, broken in order to survive. And when she escaped, the world had already declared her dead. Returning now, without proof, without power, meant putting herself at the mercy of the very people who'd tried to erase her. But she had followed the whispers. The Spencer name kept coming up. The money. The silence. Someone had wanted the baby hidden. Maybe not Bill. Maybe not Will. But someone with power, someone afraid of what Luna represented. And now that she was back, the nightmare began again. The city erupted. The media couldn't contain it. Luna Nozawa, back from the dead. Spencer baby miracle or scandal? Who hid the child? Investigations were reopened. Dylan was arrested, her confession fully documented.
Dr.
Lee was summoned for questioning, again. And Sheila, once believed to be in hiding, was now a person of interest. Had she been the one to pull Luna from the wreckage? Had she experimented again, as she had done with Finn? No one knew. But the fingerprints of her past were everywhere. Will was torn. His love for Luna, long buried under grief, roared back with unbearable force. But so did the betrayal. Why hadn't she tried harder to return sooner? Why had she allowed him to suffer? Her answer was simple. Because they would have taken him from me. And I didn't know if I could trust you anymore. Electra watched from the sidelines, heart in pieces. Her own role in Luna's downfall, once justified, now twisted. She had believed Luna to be a manipulator, a liar. But seeing her now, bruised by time, shaped by survival, Electra saw something truer. And she couldn't forgive herself. The Spencer family was never the same after that. Will and Luna began a slow, cautious dance toward reconciliation for their child, if nothing else. Katie, quietly heartbroken, stepped aside. Bill launched an internal investigation within Spencer Media, determined to uncover whether someone in his empire had orchestrated the cover-up. What he found would remain a secret for now. And the baby, whose name was finally spoken aloud, Kai, became the center of a storm he could never understand. Loved fiercely, protected endlessly, and carrying within him the legacy of truth unearthed too late. Some said Luna should have stayed dead. That resurrection brought nothing but pain. But Will knew better. Because in Kai's eyes, he saw not just a son. He saw redemption. And in Luna's return, he saw not betrayal, but a chance to start again if the past didn't swallow them whole first.